Our guy Cody is looking at the transfer portal thinking that the order of priority is offensive line, kicker, running back.
I got to go quarterback first on that list. You got to bring in a transfer quarterback, a guy that's played, a guy that has experience at a Power Five level. Um, Offensive line, to me, they've got a lot of young guys that are really starting to prove themselves. Um, Kicker is definitely a position where they must address. Um, it's not out of the question that uh, they pick up a high school kid, that they actually offer a kicker out of high school this year. That's a possibility. But yeah, obviously you look at that transfer portal for that position. And running back, I do think you do want to go look for somebody else that has had a little bit of experience playing. Because you brought in Marquis Step last season, and he showed a few flashes, but quite frankly didn't get a lot of playing time. So it's kind of hard to think right now what you're going to do in the transfer portal when you still have 3-4 weeks until signing day, and you kind of get that out of the way and see how many positions that you're looking at to fill. So, but yeah, you're always looking offensive line. Obviously, you're always wanting to bolster that position. So I don't want to cut that completely out of there. And I would also go on the other side of the ball and maybe look at some other defensive tackle type guys. I think Nebraska has a lot of defensive end bodies, not a lot of big defensive tackle type bodies, with the loss of Damian Daniels. So, I look at both of those sides, in the trenches right there as maybe targets in the transfer portal.
I got to think that this transfer portal has certainly given these coaching staffs a lot more to think about when it comes to roster configuration. For as complicated as that was before in trying to juggle scholarships with available roster spots, now they have to deal with a transfer portal, not knowing who's going to contact them tomorrow and say, I put myself in the transfer portal, or however that communication's made, and they know that they're going to be without another offensive lineman.
There's that's a full-time job now, as your transfer portal tracker. And you report to the coaching staff on a daily basis or on an hourly basis, basically. So yeah, it's like free agency basically, and yeah, it's crazy. Really, especially when you got all these guys that are available that have an extra year to play around with as well. So they can always go look where, hey, the grass is greener here. I'm going to go play for these guys for a year because they're probably going to be in the college football playoff. So yeah, it's bizarre. It's really, really bizarre.
And another reason why it made sense for the NCAA to allow those 7 extra roster spots or scholarship spots on each roster, because you could have a situation where you lose 3 guys in the transfer portal next week. You didn't foresee that, and you've got to balance that out with bringing other guys in. You got to, it's a constant balancing act of the roster, and not just the total numbers, but you need enough players at each position.
Yeah, and that's why it's funny when you hear right now with names of coaches that are in a head coaching position in the NFL getting mentioned for a college job. Why would you want to do that if you're already entrenched in the NFL? When you have to come back here into the college ranks and recruit year round and deal now with this transfer portal nightmare that wasn't around a couple of years ago, quite frankly, not in the way it is now. But I mean, it's going to age you like you're the president of the United States, pretty much. I think you're going to notice that kind of aging in a couple of years on a guy if they're going to do that.
For sure. I know it's become part of my regular process in the off season, especially to check out the commits. I go to the commitment list every day just to see if there's been any other players across the country that have committed to anywhere. And then the other list is the transfer portal list.
It's like it's like the holdback guy. That's a job, the holdback guy, and then there's a transfer portal guy. So, yeah, there's lots of jobs available in college football these days.
From what I hear, there's apparently a lot of jobs available across the country, period. Big Pete. Yeah, I was just talking to a Kentucky guy the other day. Wandale Robinson just finished up a pretty historic season there at Kentucky, 90 catches and 1,000 yards.
Not surprised here. I mean, that's the kind of guy Wandale is, and that's why he left Nebraska, because he can put those kind of numbers up instead of getting the snot knocked out of him trying to run the ball up the middle.
I believe he led the SEC in receiving.
He might have. I mean, that's pretty great year for a receiver, and I mean, you know what? You hate to speculate on what could have been, but the running back room here at Nebraska was a lot different this year than it was last year when Wandale was still on the team, and I suspect that Wandale would not have had to play hardly any running back, if any, this season. And just think if he could have done that, teamed up with Samori Toure and Omar Manning and Xavier Betts all season, that could have been pretty special too.
94 catches to be exact. Wait a minute, that this stat board might be behind by a game. It says 11 games played, unless he missed a game this season, because obviously they played a 12-game season. So he might be over 100 now.
Wow.
If that wasn't updated, second in the SEC in receiving yards and number one in catches.
He's a special football player. Yeah, that's about all you can say about him. He's a special person as well. I mean, the nicest kid that you would ever meet, and one hell of a football player.
Huge season. My goodness. Yeah. That's a lot of catches.
Congrats. I mean, you know what? Did he want to play? Did he want to be on a 3-9 football team? No. They had a great year at Kentucky this year.
Yeah, 9-3.
Yeah.
And they'll get a decent bowl bid out of that. Man, when you mentioned he and Toure playing together, you just never know. With all these one-score games, you have no idea what impact that would have been, possibly.
Yeah. Yep.
That might have, who knows? That might have won a game, 2, 3. I don't know. Who knows?
I know. It's crazy to think of what could have been. Yeah.
You got to think it would at least turn the tide in one of those games. He would have made some kind of crazy play or two to make a difference.
Yep.
All right, folks. We appreciate you being here for Nebraska Cornhuskers Live it's been Monday the last few weeks. Blame me. So Greg's been kind enough to adjust for me and everybody else you have as well, because we get a pretty good crowd over on the rankings watch party. So I got to do that and take your calls. So that's a pretty good deal. When Lincoln Riley announced yesterday, Greg, we went live and we had over 1,600 people on live.
I believe it. I mean, that's what drives, any kind of a coaching change or anything like that. It goes crazy. Really.
And this hit me during the conversation, Greg, and you can rack your brain to see if you can come up with an answer. I cannot think of another time when there has been a head coach that left a blue blood and went directly to another blue blood the next season. Because when you think about it,
Lane Kiffin, you could kind of put in there.
Did he go straight from USC to Tennessee, one year to another?
Yeah, Tennessee to USC. Yeah,
Tennessee to USC. Yeah, Tennessee to USC, back-to-back years. That's a good one. Because I thought Mark Richt, Georgia, Miami, if you want to consider them blue bloods, We can have an argument all day about that. Of course, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer had time between.
Yeah.
Saban went to the NFL for 2 years between LSU and Alabama. Urban Meyer took a year off between Florida, Ohio State. I just couldn't come up with too many other examples. Brett Bielema, Wisconsin, Arkansas, those aren't at that level. Talking Oklahoma, USC,
Yeah.
that just doesn't
That's
happen.
the topper. Yeah, I mean, because that blows. I mean, mine is good. I mean, but yeah, I don't consider Tennessee in that group. But yeah, and funny thing is, we're mentioning USC twice here. So if that doesn't tell you anything, yeah, go figure it out on your own there. Because you would ask yourself, I mean, it's like, okay, USC's been floundering lately under several head coaches. Oklahoma, year in, year out, is almost in the college football playoff, and now moving to the SEC. All the money and everything's guaranteed to you now. It couldn't be better to be at Oklahoma, right? Wrong. We're talking USC. We're talking Southern California. You drive to work, you drive past the beach. You're driving to work in Oklahoma, you're driving past cows and fields, right? So no brainer. How hard is it to recruit to USC? And especially you're taking a job when you already got USC's already loaded with talent anyway. We all know that. They just need somebody in there to take the reins and get it all figured out. So yeah, when you do all the X's and O's, I think that's a no brainer any day. Hey, I love going out and visiting LA any chance I get, and I would love to work out there. And you're going to get compensated for it, obviously. So yeah, crazy, but that's the way it is. I mean, and especially we got to drop LSU in there too. I mean, was he or was he not considering LSU? I don't know. Probably not, since he actually volunteered that information, since he had something else working.
Yeah. Oklahoma fans not too happy that he was asked about LSU, and he was accurate in what he said. I will not be the next head coach at LSU.
That one I would not. That's more of a lateral move anyway. I think.
Yeah.
I think you're pretty much. You're better off, really. I think at Oklahoma, especially joining the SEC, than you would be at LSU. That's my opinion, but they're pretty close.
Yeah, I think that's a great debate. I don't know. I think you can debate that either side. I think you can also debate Oklahoma, USC, either side. It depends on what you're looking for. But you're definitely a USC guy versus Oklahoma in that debate.
Because like we say a lot, I'm a recruiting guy, and I look where. I mean, it's not hard to recruit to Oklahoma, no, but it's probably the easiest place to recruit to if you're USC across the board. Maybe you can throw Alabama in there, but that's a football only kind of deal.
Yeah.
You're going to court some kid from Alabama to come to Los Angeles and play. You got a pretty good shot at it. So as vice versa, I guess you have a shot too. But we're just saying. Where would you rather spend 4 years in Tuscaloosa?
Oh, absolutely,
Los Angeles.
And that's why I've always said. Now, USC has obviously been a football power forever, aside from being down here and there, and obviously in the last 10 years. Where UCLA, that's why I've always thrown my hands up and thought, why can't they win in football?
Yeah, well, they're always going to be USC's little sister. I mean,
sure,
but
there's a lot of little sisters out there that get it done, like Auburn and Michigan State. They're little sisters in the same state too, but they.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a very strange question to try to think about, because they obviously don't have any problems with basketball. They've got basketball figured out pretty well. But yeah, it is kind of a shocker, because you do. I mean, over all my years of covering recruiting and covering a lot of guys out of the state, out of the city of Los Angeles, quite frankly, all these guys that I've known over the years that have played in the NFL and went to either USC or UCLA. Yeah, I think for the most part, USC is on the top of everybody's list. Every commit or every recruit coming out of Southern California, USC for some reason has that stigma to where that's where you want to go to win. UCLA is like, okay, if USC won't take me, okay, I'll go across town to UCLA, or maybe I'll consider somewhere else, and that's where you see a lot of the drop off where USC they close on their kids. Those kids end up there. A lot of the UCLA kids might go there and then transfer, or it's not for them, and they end up going across the country somewhere else, and they wind up having a good career. So that's kind of the way I've kind of seen those two schools in the recruiting game over the years.
So you correct me if I'm wrong, because this is the other unique aspect to USC, and you kind of hit on it, but to clarify it, Ohio State's owned the Big Ten, Clemson's owned the ACC, Oklahoma's owned the Big 12, but they've got to go. Like, Ohio's a good recruiting state, but Ohio State's got to go. They got to go to California. They got to go to Texas. They got to go to Florida. They can't just sit in Ohio and be one of the best teams in the country. Same thing with Clemson. Great football players in South Carolina, but they're obviously in Georgia and Florida and all over the place getting players. Same thing with Oklahoma, as you just mentioned. Even more so, they've got to go to Texas and elsewhere to get players. USC, they can stay right there and almost field the whole team.
Yep.
Right there. I think they're the only one in the entire country that can say that with basically, now Texas A&M, they can stay in Texas and do that, but there's a ton of competition. USC's got, not that they don't have any competition, but local competition. They're the king.
Everybody grows up. If you're a football player, you grow up as a USC fan. That's just the way it is. And also, if I'll throw it in there too, that if you're a high school age kid or younger, the big football camps are all held at USC. There's nothing going on at UCLA for the most part. I mean, there are a few things, but UCLA is just not a destination spot there. Anything nationally that's going to go to LA, they're doing it at USC. So that's another, a little bit of a edge that they have over recruiting the local talent. And that's kind of where I kind of go with saying that, kind of the secondhand guys end up at UCLA or elsewhere across the country. So yeah, it is a unique dynamic there. And I think when you actually see USC being really, really good, it's when they actually have a mix, when they do have some top-notch guys from across the country, which they never have. They never have a problem signing, 4 or 5-star guys from Florida or from Texas or anywhere. Just take your pick. They will never have that problem. So yeah.
Yeah, that they certainly want to expand and not just lock down, but be a national program. But it was just my point that they could practically stay right there.
And also to my point as well is that you don't see a lot of, every year we deal with about 25, 30, 35, maybe tops 5 stars in the country. How often do you see any of those 5 stars have UCLA up there on their top 5 list? It's not very often.
And Lincoln Riley's not going to have to mess with the SEC because the SEC is going to be awfully crowded now. It already is, but Oklahoma and Texas, whereas that Pac-12 is ripe for the taking.
It is. I mean, it's been wide open for the longest time. Since USC was a dominant program, the Pac-12 has been wide open.
Yep. Oregon for a few years with Chip Kelly.